Hi again, and we are in our second session of studying the poems of T.S. Eliot, the poet who said, "Great poetry communicates before it is understood." And remember that this is the author of The Wasteland. And many people felt they had to do research to understand the poem, and he said, no, you don't. You just have to hear it and listen to it, and you'll get it. Today we're going to tackle his poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And we have to ask the question, what's a love song? Well, turn on the radio and you'll hear love songs. Love that expresses love, songs that express broken hearts. And so that's what we're expecting to hear with the title. Is that what we're going to get? To understand this poem, you should best imagine the following situation. You're at a dance, and all the women and girls are seated on one side, all the men are on the other side, and between them is a large space. And in protocol, the man must walk across that space to ask a woman to dance. And it takes a certain, shall we say, courage, fortitude to do that, because you don't know what you're going to hear when you get to the other side. You might hear, "Oh yes, I'd love to," and you might hear, "What, with you? No." So you don't know what you're going to get. Now, for some of us, that fear of rejection is no big deal. If you don't want to dance with me, I'll find somebody else. For others, it's monumental. J. Alfred Prufrock, we'll see. I'm going to break the discussion of the poem into two parts to accommodate the technology. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. This is the first stanza. Who are you and I? Who's in the room with J. Alfred? There's nobody in the room. I think he's talking to his reflection in a mirror. And it's evening, the dying time of day. And he gives us this image of a patient who's been anesthetized on a table. Why are we numbing ourselves in the poem? He's numbing somebody up for an operation. We've got desertion in the streets and somebody's muttering. I think J. Alfred's muttering to himself. Dirty restaurants with sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Maybe that's where he went to have a lonely dinner. And the streets that he's going to go through to get to where he wants to go lead him or follow like a tedious argument, an argument you don't want to have, and to lead you to an overwhelming question. Well, what's the overwhelming question, J. Alfred? But he doesn't want to ask it. Let's just go where we're going. Where's he going? He's going to a room, he says, a room where women come and go, and they're talking of Michelangelo. Okay, they're talking about a Renaissance artist. Fine. But then again, how does J. Alfred know what they're talking about? They could be talking about the price of pork chops. They could be talking about a sports event. They could be talking about anything. But he thinks he knows that they're talking of Michelangelo. They're not talking about love and romance. On we go. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. Dirty images, yellowness, smoke, soot, dirty drains. Not a very inviting romantic environment. And he's almost describing the actions of a cat And if my cat were here, she's around the corner sleeping, we could use her as an example, because the cat comes and jumps, leaps. It's October, it's fall, it's the dying season. It curls and goes to sleep. And sometimes if you feel stressed or you feel like you've got a lot of problems, maybe what you would like to do is to, take a nap or go to sleep and get unconscious so you don't have to feel or deal with them. Next stanza. And indeed, there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and the time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. You know what procrastination is. It's when you put stuff off. J. Alfred is putting something off. There's plenty of time. There's time to do this. We don't have to do it right now. And he's preparing his face to meet other faces. Women put on makeup, guys shave, put on some aftershave. We're getting our faces ready to go out and meet with each other. But there'll be time. We can put off this big thing. But he's bothered by this question he's going to ask. Well, okay, what's the question? Well, we don't know, but he says there's plenty of time for revision and indecision. He can't make up his mind before he goes to take tea. Maybe he's going to a room where he's going to have tea with some people. And he's back to this room. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. He seems to have these women on his mind. He's obsessed a little bit with them. Next stanza. And indeed, there will be time to wonder, do I dare, and do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. They will say how his hair is growing thin. My morning coat, my collar mounting to the chin, firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. But they will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute there is time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. What is it he's having a hard time daring? Well, I think it's time to bring it out in the open. And go back to that metaphor. He's having a hard time walking across the floor to the female to say, would you like to dance? Would you like to go out to dinner? Would you like to go to tea? Would you like to have a relationship? Something like that. Because he's afraid of rejection. And the fear of rejection is so powerful in him that it causes him to be indecisive. And so he's wondering if he can dare. He's very self-conscious about his appearance. Oh, I'm getting thin. I've got a bald spot on my hair. He's well dressed, but he thinks people are going to look at him and say, oh, he's getting so thin. He's getting old. For I have known them already, known them all, have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voices, dying with a dying fall, beneath the music from a farther room. So how should I presume? And I have known the eyes already, known them all, the eyes that fix you in a formulated phrase. And when I am formulated, sprawling on a pin, when I am pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin to spit out all the butt ends of my days and ways, and how should I presume? And I have known the arms already, known them all, arms that are braceleted and white and bare, but in the lamplight, downed with light brown hair. Is it perfume from a dress that makes me so digress? Arms that lie along a table or wrap about a shawl, and how should I presume? And how should I begin? Well, whatever he's been doing for a long time, going to these gatherings. He's known these mornings, evenings, afternoons, but his life's pretty depressing if he can measure it out with coffee spoons. He goes to these teas and goes to another tea, there's another spoon, another tea, another spoon, another tea, another spoon. But he can't forget those voices in the other room. But he doesn't think he can presume To presume means to do something that maybe you shouldn't have done, or somebody thinks you shouldn't have done. How should I presume to do this? Because the other person might not react the way I want them to. And he feels he's being watched. He's being watched like one of those specimens, like a bug that gets pinned on one of those cork boards, and you put a label beneath it, this is such and such a bug. He's wriggling in pain, but he's fixed, he's formulated. They've sized him up. An old guy with balding hair and thin body. Okay, so he's back at the question. He repeats his questions. How can I presume to do what I think I should do? But in the next stanza, he can't forget the women. He can't forget their arms, the light brown hair on their arms, the perfume in their dresses. He can't forget that he is attracted to women, that there's something about them that attracts him. Their arms that lie along a table or wrap about a shawl. Again, how should I presume? Good question he has. But he's fearing rejection powerfully. Next part. Shall I say, I have gone at dusk through narrow streets and watched the smoke that rises from the pipes of lonely men in shirt sleeves leaning out of windows? I should have been a ragged pair of claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. In the afternoon, the evening sleeps so peacefully, smoothed by long fingers, asleep, tired, or it malingers. Stretched on the floor here beside you and me, should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis? But though I have wept and fasted, wept and prayed, though I have seen my head grown slightly bald, brought in upon a platter, I am no prophet, and here's no great matter. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker. And in short, I was afraid. What's he going to say if he talks to these women? Do they really want to hear that he's one of the lonely men in shirt sleeves that stares out of a window and leans out of a window? Well, probably not. And so he imagines himself a ragged pair of claws, a crab on the bottom of the ocean. On the bottom of the ocean, it's quiet, it's safe, nobody's going to bother you down there, and he won't be in this emotional turmoil that he's in. And then we get back to the sleep thing. Well, when you sleep, you're unconscious, you're numb, nothing's happening, and it can malinger. But he's wondering if he'll have that strength it's going to take to force the moment to its crisis by saying, would you like to dance? Would you like to have tea? He's gone through a religious ritual. He thinks he's wept, he's fasted, he's prayed, and he's seen his head, like St. John the Baptist, brought in upon a platter. Remember, St. John loses his head because Herod promises Salome's mother that if Salome dances for him, he'll cut off St. John's head, and he does. But Prufrock knows he's not a great prophet, and this thing that he's trying to do isn't any big deal. It's no great matter. And besides, he feels his greatness is gone. The eternal footman might be God, it might be the devil, but he's snickering, because Prufrock's going to try to do something because he's afraid. He's afraid he'll be rejected in one way or another. On we go. And would it have been worth it after all, after the cups, the marmalade, the tea, among the porcelain, among some talk of you and me, would it have been worthwhile to have bitten off the matter with a smile, to have squeezed the universe into a ball, to roll it towards some overwhelming question, to say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all, I shall tell you all. If one settling a pillow by her head should say, that is not what I meant at all. That is not it at all. The next argument for procrastinating, putting off, or avoiding what he wants to do, feels he should do, but can't do is, well, would it really have been worth it? And you know how that goes sometimes. Well, you lost the game by a point. Yeah, but would the trophy have been worth it? Nah, I don't think so. It's only a small trophy, 6 inches high. Would it have been worth it? Would it have been worth it to squeeze the universe into a ball? And there's that big thing again, the overwhelming question. And ask that overwhelming question because what he most fears. He wants to be Lazarus, come back from the dead. He must feel like he's emotionally dead, or wish that he's emotionally dead. And then her reaction. He thinks the reaction is going to be, that's not what I meant. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm not talking about love and romance. That's not what he's fearing the woman's rejection so much that he can't ask the question, even though it might be, would you like to have tea? And would it have been worth it after all? Would it have been worthwhile after the sun sets and the dooryards and the sprinkled streets, after the novels, after the teacups, after the skirts that trail along the floor, and this and so much more? It is impossible to say just what I mean, but as if a magic lantern through the nerves and patterns on a screen, would it have been worthwhile if one settling a pillow or throwing off a shawl and turning toward the window should say, that is not it at all. That is not what I meant at all. He's still hung up on this. Well, would it have really been worthwhile to ask what I want to ask? So maybe I shouldn't do it. It wouldn't have been worthwhile. But he's angry. He's frustrated. It's impossible to say what I mean. He can't get it out of his mouth, and he's frustrated. And he's nervous. His nerves would be like a pattern on a screen. He's so shaky because one might say, again, that's not it at all. That's not what I meant at all. This is part 1 of his poem. Well, no, I'm going to keep going. This is part 1 of his poem, and I'll do part 2 next.